Welcome to our weekly Parsha class. This is David Grossman with the Institute of Jewish Chaplaincy, focusing on service to veterans and active service members. This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayishlach. We've been watching the early stages of development in God's plan for the Jewish nation and our mission to be a light unto the world, to set an example of highest moral leadership that will inevitably bring about world peace and the revelation of the divine within the physical. Avram set the stage with unbridled kindness and reaching out to everyone. Yitzchak then focused on developmental stage, the creating structure and organizational foundations. Yitzchak sought to bless Esav, whose boundless energy, youthful single-mindedness, his artful cunning, those could champion the family cause. And it was only when it became clear that Esav was not at all interested that Yitzchak finally reconciled himself with naming and blessing Yaakov as the successor. So Yaakov then considered all of the above, and he pursued his own responsibilities. Yaakov and Esav are twins. They have a shared divine mission, and Yaakov is the embodiment of Tiferes. Avram was Chesed, Yitzchak was Gevura, Yaakov is Tiferes. Tiferes is the merging and blending of opposites. It's the beauty of combining. His goal is to incorporate the best of the forefathers as well as the power of his twin, Esav. Combine all of that. So, how to get Esav's buy-in? Let's consider for a moment the power of Esav, because we often see him as the villain of the story. And let's look at the book of Samuel, the book of Shmuel. There's an interesting story there when Shaul, when the kingdom is stripped from him, and the prophet Shmuel is told to go to the house of Yishai, the house of Jesse, and appoint the new king. So Shmuel goes to the house of Yishai, and he says, line up your sons, and he looks by to each one of the sons, one by one, and wonderful, fine specimens, each one of them. Handsome and so physically impressive as well as mentally impressive, and just men of great stature. And each one of them, when the prophet stood in front of them, God said, no, not that one, not that one, not that one. And then at a loss, Shmuel turned to Yishai and said, do you have more sons? And Yishai said, oh, there's just the runt of the litter, call him in. So they bring in David. David, or Hebrew is David, is not at all like the others. Dark complexion, ruddy, red, not the same size as the others, not at all that impressive. And in fact, Shmuel, when the prophet Samuel looks at David, he sees Esav. He sees all that one would see in Esav, he saw in David, and he shuddered with terror. And God responded to the prophet, but you don't know his heart. All of the bloodshed and all of the battles and all of the power that David will bring to becoming the king of Israel and conquering all the enemies of the Jewish people and establishing a Jewish state, all of these things that David HaMelech does, these were all the things that could be seen in Esav. So, with that in mind, let's go back and visit Esav. Esav has all of that, and Yitzchak saw the potential. Yaakov also saw the potential in his twin brother, and he wanted to combine that. He wanted to bring all that in together, harness those things. But how do you get Esav's buy-in? At the end of the day, it's Yaakov that has to be the leader, because Yaakov is the one who spent all the time in studying the Torah and becoming a master of the Torah, and it is the Torah's guidance that has to be the final decision-making. Esav has to come under his leadership. How does he get that buy-in? So Yaakov prepared. He sent messengers ahead, he sent gifts, he called himself your servant, and he successfully aroused Esav's love and compassion. The simple text of the Chumash says that Esav ran to him, hugged him, and kissed him. And there's little dots above the word kissed. And Rashi asks, what is that? What are the dots there for? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the great Kabbalist, says that although we know that Esav hates Yaakov, past, present, future, but in that moment, his true brotherly love was aroused. And in that moment, Yaakov hoped to bring him on board. And it was only when everything was evident that Esav was not going to come on board, that he was not going to follow under Yaakov's leadership, that Yaakov finally acquiesced to the responsibilities that would become his and his alone, to somehow ultimately bring all of those powers together and to create the Jewish nation, which would ultimately bring about world peace and an understanding of the divine within the physical, and reveal all of those things that would come about through the Jewish people. It's a long journey. It's a more arduous journey. He had hoped to do it with Esav, and instead he would have to incorporate all of Esav's strengths into his own personality and into his children's personalities to bring about the ultimate desired goal. The ultimate success was really envisioned at the outset. A parsha is called Vayishlach. Vayishlach means messengers, to send. He sent out. Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefunav, that Yaakov sent messengers ahead of him. And in this sense, the idea is that we are all messengers. But because we are messengers of the infinite God, therefore we have infinite power, infinite resource, infinite inspiration. If we will remember in our mission the Meshaleach, the one who sent us, then we have access to the infinite resources and powers as well. I hope this has been helpful. Have a great Shabbos.